Hi, I'm Dr. Jim Waldsmith. I'm a principal in Vetel Diagnostics. It's a diagnostic imaging company, and today we're going to talk a little bit about artificial intelligence and specifically how we use it in digital radiography. So our Metron software platform has been around for a long time, and in 2016 we were the first to bring out the utilization of artificial intelligence in image recognition. Artificial intelligence is going to be the fabric of our lives forever, and it's important that you understand a little bit about what the characteristics are of an artificial intelligence platform so you can make good decisions when it comes to medical imaging devices and artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence in medicine hasn't been around that long. Actually, in 2015, MIT was the first group to bring out a system where they'd classified all the different forms of mitotic cells on endothelial cells or cervical cells in humans, and developed a mitotic index where they could look at a photomicrograph and determine how many cells were dividing and get some indication of whether or not there was a risk for neoplasia in that patient. So that was 2015, so not really quite 10 years ago. In 2016, we brought out our first system. And what I want to do now, just for a few minutes, is just talk a little bit about our brains and artificial intelligence systems and really how we work together and how we're different from one another. So I like to think of the human brain through this saying that says you can't understand how birds fly by only studying feathers. And computers are really good at studying single things with millions of examples to learn from. Humans don't require that. So we can reason and intuit. When you were a small child, someone showed you a dog and someone showed you a cat, and for the rest of your life, from a data set of one, you knew what a dog was and what a cat was and what the differences were between the two. So that's something humans can do. We can also parallel think or brainstorm. We can try and solve problems thinking about multiple parameters at the same time. And we can imagine. We can think into the future and wonder what's next. Another thing to remember about humans is we learn in 3 dimensions. So a picture of a cat is a single thing in our brain. And that's different from a computer. So, and the other thing about being a human is we're the only ones that can really diagnose. That's a human phenomenon. And no matter what's implied about software, ultimately, it's a human that can, through parallel thinking, consider all the factors and come up with a diagnosis. Software, on the other hand, is a very slow learner, requires huge data sets. So you only need to see one cat and one dog to know what a cat and a dog was. A computer needs tens or hundreds of thousands of black cats and orange cats and black cats sitting and black cats jumping. And so you have to have these huge curated data sets for them to work. And computers think in parallel lines. Now they can think very, very fast, but they're very linear in how they think. But computers learn in 16,000 dimensions. And so the way a computer looks at something versus the way a human does is very different. And that's where we can work together to learn new things together. And I'll show you some clinical examples in a minute. The other thing about computers is they're fast. They're faster than a human brain. And so they're really good at finding needles in haystacks very, very quickly. Okay, so what does that make a computer? It's a great assistant. It's never going to replace you. It will displace you as a veterinarian because you're not going to spend your time doing measurements and calculations. You're going to spend your time laying hands on your patients and diagnosing and treating. So again, really the perfect assistant. So what is an artificial intelligence system? Well, it begins with image classification, and for a system to be any good, you need hundreds of thousands, if not millions of images of everything you want the computer to learn. And those images have to reflect the spectrum of everything that's normal and not normal so that the computer knows what it's looking at. So that's called image classification. Here's an example of it used in real life where you see radiographs being taken and the system's just been put in acquisition mode and starts taking radiographs, and the system's automatically detecting that it's a horse, that it's a hawk, that it's a lateral, that's applying the appropriate image processing and labeling it, and then if measurements need to be made, it's doing that for you. So the whole process is done automatically, and this is a function of image classification. Again, requiring really good image databases to train the system well, and then it can do these things for you very quickly. Another thing it can do is sort images for you. So imagine that somebody sends you an email with 50 radiographs and said, would you please look at these for me and organize them, and then you're downloading them and looking at each one and labeling and measuring. Our particular system, because it's got a great image classification system, is going to identify all those images for you. I'll just show you again. They just show up. If you look at the thumbnails, they say other, other, and individually the system just looks at each image, determines what it is, labels it, rotates it, again applies image processing, and in our case it will also write a report for you if necessary. Okay, if I were to show you these two radiographs, could you tell me which one was the right front and which one was the left front? And you'd probably be right about half the time, but the system will be right about 97% of the time. So this is an example of where 16,000 dimensional thinking, if you will, takes place. So we know from looking at the data set that the computer figured out the difference between right and left front, and it did it with only a 3% error rate. So we check it, we find out it's right, but now that gives us the opportunity to go back and look again and say, what is it that the computer sees that I don't? What is it seeing with its 16,000 dimensional thinking that I'm not seeing with my 3-dimensional thinking? And what we found on at least the front foot and fetlock is we think it's the lateral aspect of P1 is always more curved than the medial aspect. And we find that's true both for front and back feet. So this is what we think the software is seeing. Let me back up again. Here's also some examples where the software can separate things out. So these are the ways equine practitioners take radiographs of the hocks. This little cartoon is the X-ray generator. The orange line here is a detector panel. And everybody pretty much takes these 3 views the same way. But the other 2 oblique views are taken differently by different practitioners. So some do the medial to lateral oblique this way, truly, and other ones do a plantar to dorsal approach. And our system will tell the difference if it was taken medial to lateral, it is here, versus plantar to dorsal as it is here. And again, we wonder, what's the difference? Well, in this case, we think it's magnification. If you see the calcaneus, the distance between the calcaneus and the detector is about 5 inches here, or 12 centimeters. Here, it's almost touching. So there's going to be more magnification in this image. And then if we look at the 2 radiographs, you see the calcaneus looks larger here. So we're thinking that basically the software is detecting the magnification in the calcaneus on this view, where it's not on this particular view. Another thing we can do is identify correct positioning. So we know that a good lateral foot radiograph should look like this, but if the system detects an obliquity in the coffin joint, it will tell you. It will just say that you've got a malalignment. It also will do the same thing for the DP foot. In addition to detecting malalignment, it will also tell you which way to move the X-ray generator to correct the alignment. So what we do is we draw a line between the distal condyles of P2 here, and then we draw a sagittal line here in the middle of P1. They should be about 90 degrees if you're taking a straight-on view. But if you are obliquing the view in any way or the other, it's going to change this angle, and we're going to report that. So those are all examples of image classification. Once you classify images properly, then you can calibrate to eliminate magnification and then do measurements. So here you're seeing the 26-point markup that we do of the lateral equine foot that generates a report with the 10 most common indices of measurement that are used to identify pathology in the horse. And then once you do that, it automatically generates a report for you. So here's a picture of this patient. Here's the normality curve. The little black line here is this patient's palmar angle relative to the database of normal. And then on page 2, we list out all 10 indices that we measure. We then plot this particular horse, the black line is this horse, in terms of where it's normal or not normal, and gives you a very quick reference point as to what do you need to do for this horse's foot to bring this indice back into a normal range. Something that we're working on now that's coming soon is the equine neck. Again, we're focusing on measurement and determining if the measurements are in a normal range or a not normal range. And so with the neck, there's been several papers recently making measurements of the neck in an effort to predict anomaly or disease. And we're in the process of doing that. That will be released later this year, but again, an automated process. We also have some other features that we do. Here we're superimposing a radiograph on a photograph, which aids significantly in having a communication tool with farriers and horse owners. We also can do image stitching. Here you see a myelogram of a horse where we've stitched 3 images together. So we've got one image all the way from the skull and C1 all the way down to, you can actually see T1 here. So that's image stitching. And then this is a morphing tool where we're doing a before and after. Here you see the foot unshod, and then after the shoe is put on, and in this case we're measuring the difference in the palmar angle before and after. We also can take these measured feet and apply it to a conical model. So this happens to be a CT scan of a foot, and then we've taken the measurements that we make, apply them onto the conical model, and now you have a 3D tool from which you can also make measurements and pre-plan your shoeing and your trimming on the horse. We also do it for the equine skull. Dentistry is another growing area, especially in 3D imaging, and we do a conical model of that as well. Okay, next I'm going to talk about how artificial intelligence can improve the quality of radiographs. So first of all, there's different types of image processing. We want to talk about lossless versus lossy image processing, and then also how we're identifying noise and taking it out of the system. So we have an AI-driven noise reduction system. So the first thing I want to talk about is lossy versus lossless. So if these 2 images here are the same horse, the same hawk, same X-ray generator, everything's the same, just 2 different digital radiography systems, and we're comparing image processing. And the image on the left, at first, you probably like a little bit because it's very contrasty and it pops. But as you scrutinize it, you'll see there are these black halos and smudges around the bone, and the mural cavities overly dark, soft tissue borders are indistinct. Whereas with lossless image processing, I don't know if this will project, but you can actually see hair, extensor tendons, bone trabecular detail, hair, and if you look real carefully, you can see the tail hairs coming down. But the important thing, and the reason you should know about lossy versus lossless image processing, is let's look at the chestnut here, which is about 1 by 3 centimeters. But here with this type of image processing, it renders it in such a way, it's actually sacrificing some data to increase the contrast, and it looks like it's about 1 centimeter by 1/2 centimeter. Now, chestnuts are not a pathological concern for many people, but what if that was a tumor? And you would have no way of knowing if you didn't know that this was lossy image processing. So the takeaway is, if you see halos around bones or edges, that's probably lossy image processing, and you may want to scrutinize the image a little bit more carefully. Okay, I'm going to move through this pretty quickly. So the images that you're going to see on the left here are with standard image processing. The images on the right are using our Lumina IQ, where we're utilizing artificial intelligence to identify the noise frequency. Noise shows up as graininess in an image. So we identify those frequencies, we actually subdue them or delete them, and you notice you just get much better contrast. See how well we can superimpose the patella over the distal condyle of the femur. The joint space is much clearer here. Here's an example of P3. Notice how much clearer the vascular channels are in P3 once you take the noise or the graininess out. Here's a nice cervical image. And by the way, all the images I'm showing you here were taken with portable X-ray generators. These are the typical images that you would get in the life of an equine practitioner. No special hardware involved. And then briefly, and to wrap up, we're bringing out 2 new digital radiography systems this year, the Enduro X and the Enduro Dash. The Enduro Dash is the fastest digital radiography system that there is these days. It has a cycle time of under 3 seconds. Really outperforms the competition in many ways. It includes our imaging software, but it's a very fast system for the veterinarian that needs to take a lot of radiographs quickly. This is a system that does that very well. Comes with our Metron software, and it comes in a 5-year package with a 5-year warranty, and everything's included: hoof tunnel, hoof blocks, and a full accessory package. So that's the Enduro Dash. Think dash, think speed. The Enduro X is our flagship product. This is the finest DR system there is on the market now. This system is 100% rugged. The panel is warranted for a drop of up to 1.2 meters and immersion in water for up to 1 meter. It comes with a Panasonic Toughbook, which is also military spec rated. It's a very light system. The whole system in a 10 by 12 panel weighs under 11 pounds with battery life of 8 to 10 hours. And it's an ultra high definition system. So when you're looking at DR systems, there's regular definition, high dynamic range, and high definition or ultra high definition. This is an ultra high definition panel, so your edge quality is going to be superior. And it's smart. It has all the features that I just showed you that utilize artificial intelligence to really make your day faster, more time efficient, and also more precise in terms of the measurements you make and generating reports for you. And these are just a comparison of the two systems. The Dash is just under $45,000 with a 5-year warranty, and the Enduro X with the Intellect Module is just under $55,000 with a 5-year warranty. And that concludes my presentation.